Hello everyone and welcome to Organic Matters, a podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. As you probably heard, we're on a farm. There's cattle here, but there's also crops as well. And Reuben Cope is the farmer here at Shankill Castle. So Reuben, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Hannah.
It was a bit of a wiggly trip from Limerick. So whereabouts exactly are we in the world?
We are in Paulstown, County Kilkenny, Shankill Castle. My parents bought this place in the early 90s. And I'm farming here. I've been organic for 8 years. So when I went organic, there was a point system where they brought in, so you wanted to bring in more tillage farmers. So I had never done tillage before, so it was an opportunity for me to try something new. So I started doing tillage. I did barley for the first 2 years in conversion. I just sold that conventionally, and then I geared up for my third year. And I got a contract with Flahavens, and I've been with Flahavens ever since. So this year, for example, I grew 35 acres for them. It yielded about just shy of 1.8 tonnes to the acre. So
That's pretty good for organic.
yeah, I was fairly happy with that. My first year, so when I went my first year of growing oats, I hit the 2 tonnes, and I thought that was it. I'd be like that every year, but no, it's never been as good as that. But so then, about 5 or 6 years ago, Rob Moss from the Little Mill asked me if I'd grow some wheat for him. He was growing a heritage varieties conventionally for his mill. I mean, he was getting it grown by other farmers in Kilkenny, all in Kilkenny, and he wanted some organic in that system. And it was actually down to a bakery in Waterford, Seagull Bakeries. They were like, why isn't this organic? You know, we can grow heritage grains here as well as anywhere. And so Rob asked me to try it, and it actually worked really well because it didn't need much inputs at all. The conventional guys that had grown it, it had fallen over because it was just too heavy, whereas because it's a tall crop, you know, and those tall heritage crops, they grow tall, and that's great for an organic system because they shade out the weeds, for example. But the shorter varieties, the more modern varieties, are shorter. You know, they withstand wind and stuff. So I was worried growing it initially, but my first year we grew it and it did over a tonne, maybe 1.4 tonnes to the acre. That was the Uhlans. And then the second year I grew some purple wheat for him, and that did 1.7, I remember. That was in this field over here. And then so there was only 1 year I didn't grow for him. That was last year. I grew for another baker, Plur Bakery, Seamus Jordan. Grew 7 acres for Seamus, and that was a different variety. It was Newlands, that was called Mary Gatoba, and that did really well as well. And then the last few years I've been doing crop trials with Grace Marr. So Grace she works for the IOA, but she's also doing her PhD in heritage grains, heritage wheat for sourdough production. So she's doing it on my farm and on 2 other farms, and it's for 3 years. So she did it last year, she's done it this year, and she'll be doing it again next year in the same field, but just moving down the field slightly, so it's on fresh ground every year. On my farm it's after red clover, so we're ploughing up that little corner of red clover for her, and she's using 4 different varieties of wheat. Three of them are heritage wheats, and you can see how that they grow so much taller. She's even getting the seed off Rob Moss and off Seamus as well, so that's handy that it's all in a small closed little loop.
Synchronicity in a way, isn't
it? And this year I literally bumped into her this morning, and she said that the wheat that I was growing this year did very well. It ranged from 12 to 16% protein, and she said that was fantastic.
And that's a sweet spot for
yeah.
any non
anything under 11 is rejected, I think, for her. But she said that was really good. So so I also grew for Rob this year, still waiting to hear the results, but I think I only did a tonne to the acre this year. It was very low. It was lay ground, so I was hoping it would do a little bit better than a tonne, but look, I'm happy with a tonne, and there is a better price than conventional wheat, like definitely a better price than conventional wheat. Your yields are lower, like you're not getting anything near conventional yields. We all know that now, but the price is good.
And you're direct selling as well, which must make a difference.
In a way. So I was selling it to Rob or to Seamus, yeah. And actually, Seamus ran out of some grain this year. Rob's put a new mill in, so that's up. I think it's in action now. So that's why I didn't grow from last year. He was just in the process of putting in a new mill, so that was a huge investment for him, and I think that's online now. But he had a lot of my Uhlens, in storage for the last 2 or 3 years. So I think Seamus went and got some of that, because Seamus bakes bread, and if you're ever in Burse, County Carlow on a Friday or Saturday morning, he doesn't just bake bread. He makes a huge range of pastries and pastries, everything. Like, he's just a genius. And so...
And what's the name of his shop, just for people?
His name of his bakery is Plur.
Okay, which means flour in Irish, for anyone, So to look it up and to get some of Reuben's flour in those delicious pastries.
Yeah, well, it's mostly his own now, because he got another organic grower, Jim, to grow from this year as well. So I think he's started on that supply already. So he has his own supply of wheat this year from Jim.
Wow, and isn't it amazing that it's all organic, and then there's that the kind of hunger that's out there from these artisan bakers who are looking for this as well, and flour producers. It's incredible that they can tell the quality and the difference in quality in the products that then they're making.
Yeah, and so it's definitely the bakers are definitely the ones driving it, and they're demanding the sort of organic quality. But the bakers always just want consistency. That's what bakers really need. So.
Is that hard in organic? Because there's this idea out there that it's hard to hit those targets, like you were talking about. Anything less than 11% is rejected.
Yeah, consistency doesn't mean quality.
Okay.
Consistency could be, as long as it's consistent. As long as they can do the same thing every day. Consistency could mean that it's still lowish, but they're able to work with it every day, and they're familiar with how it'll rise. Or, for example, I'm not a baker, so I don't know. But yeah.
And there's a donkey there in the background, if anyone can hear it. But when you're sowing crops, are you spring sowing? Are you autumn sowing? When do you usually sow?
Only spring. So always sow in spring. Get at it a little bit probably earlier if I can with the wheat, and then the oats afterwards. The sowing rates with the wheat, you don't want to go too strong with it. So you're I suppose between in old money about 12 stone to the acre of seed. Sometimes a bit lighter actually. Lighter. Grace. That's part of Grace's trial as well. So she's doing different sowing rates, and it's quite interesting that it doesn't always affect yield. If you sow too heavy, sometimes you're creating problems down the line. There's not enough airflow around the plants. You could get more mildew or fungus or something. So you don't want to sow too tight either.
You sound like such an expert, but like you said earlier on, you were very new relatively to tillage, but you clearly learnt a lot. You put a lot of thought into it. It goes to show that not anyone, but if you put your mind to it, you could get it done.
Yeah, well, I didn't know anything about tillage. I was just breeding cattle, sucklers up until 7 or 8 years ago, and I really loved the opportunity. I mean, look, we're lucky that the land here we're able to plough. It had been ploughed in the past, and so that wasn't the issue. But I really enjoyed I'm not a scientist at all. I'm just a farmer, but I do enjoy it. And so a few years ago, we also opened a cafe here on the farm, and that meant we had a different outlet for our own products. So eventually, like the nicest thing was actually the flour coming back, or the bread coming back, and that was sort of so so foreign to me that we could grow bread, that we could grow flour here, or have it for sale, or eat my own bread, because we definitely had our own beef, eating our own beef, and that was excitement when I started doing that first. So that's about 12 or 15 years ago. But obviously growing vegetables in the garden, growing your potatoes, your carrots, your beetroot, it's nice to have a meal where you can have everything on your plate. But one year I created everything in a burger and chips, all grown on this farm, down to the vinegar, down to the ketchup, down to, it was even the honey, everything was just to sweeten the ketchup. So that was a huge sort of, it was a huge achievement, but it wasn't sort of really that, I couldn't be doing it every week type of thing. It wasn't, Yeah, but it is a nice little achievement. So we closed our cafe recently, and now we've reopened as a farm shop, and that's again a different business. But we're selling our own beef. Seamus's bread is for sale there. Fridays and Saturdays we're open. Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays until Halloween, and we also sell our own veg. I'm also buying in a bit of organic veg from Dermot Carey, and he's an incredible grower. I just sort of try and, whenever I collect the veg, I sort of try and just rub off whatever I can, because that's it. As you said, I didn't really know much about tillage farming. I've definitely sort of tried to pick up what I can along the way from other farmers and other growers.
And in terms of cattle, then, you said sucklers. So what breed do you predominantly keep? We can see some in the distance. I can see a lot of kind of black Angus type cattle.
They're all Angus crosses. Always have an Angus bull. There he is, poking his head out the gate there, having a look.
Looking for some girlfriends, yeah.
I have had Obraks in the past, but I've gone back to the Angus, especially in the organic system. No disc budding, and that's always a plus. And tried to make a better cow crossing the Obrak with the Angus, and it was quite successful, I think. But they're still a motley crew, but they'll probably all turn black eventually because I am tight on culling all the time. I only keep the bull in for 6 weeks, and I cull quite heavily every year, and I calve quite early. As a result, I calve in January, February, and just that's to suit me a bit because of the cafe in the past. Now the farm shop is open from April onwards, and I just don't want to be calving
cows in the middle.
Yeah.
I had that a cow calved in the middle of farm shop this year. Yeah, and
it's fine if people are watching it, but all my calving is on an out farm, so it's just not feasible. So that's why we close for the winter. It's just not feasible.
And do you calve outside? Do you calve inside?
No,
how do you manage
indoors
it?
Calving,
all indoors.
Yeah. So we have quite a good sheds, all straw bedded, no slats at all. The calving shed is brilliant because it's got a high feed barrier along, so when the calves are running around, they can't get out through barriers, for example, and then there's other sheds for finishing animals off.
And how do you find, because you mentioned earlier, I guess people always talk about organic feed being quite expensive, but you're growing your own organic feed, so do you feed when they're being weaned, or do you finish any cattle for the factory, or is it all for yourself? How do you do that?
So I was finishing for the factory up until about 2 or 3 years ago, and that was getting tougher, and I did have my own barley and peas, but I had my own crops. But 2 years ago I started growing my own barley and peas, and that was then I'd get a guy to come and roll it. Then I bought my own roller, and I started rolling it fresh, and not preserving it with the propionic acid, and just rolling it as I needed it. And I'd sell excess off the farm, so I rolled or unrolled, so that's always a good income as well. So that's always for sale. I have a good bit in the shed now, about 50 tons I'd say in storage, and so I'm starting to roll that and get it out.
So if people wanted some, they could come to you. Give yourself a plug, Rueben.
Definitely, yeah. It'll be up on, I'm sure it'll be on the Organic Trading Hub. It's always on there, and Dundee, I think, as well. So always selling the barley and peas. And I don't weigh it going into the sheds, so I don't know what the yield is, so I can't tell you that. But I always weigh, so it's just weighed when I sell it. But then I'd be feeding it to my own cattle as well. Yeah, you can't feed too much at a time. It's sort of something because you have to, especially when you're they're in the sheds on a diet of red clover as well. You have to make sure they have enough roughage. So look, I do bale my own organic straw. Not every year. Some years I bale some because I do like to feed the straw, and I also whole crop. And actually, whole cropping is something I think it's something I really like doing it.
Tell people what whole cropping is if they're not familiar with it.
So you're sowing a crop of barley and peas, for example. That's what I usually whole crop. But I've whole cropped oats. I've whole cropped a lot of stuff. So it's basically you're taking the whole of the crop. So you are mowing it and baling it and wrapping it as silage. Yeah. And now I don't go in and do a whole field. I go and do a headlands of a field, because I always find, certainly in organics, look, if you're going to get any weed pressure or burdens, it's going to be on headlands. So I go in and mow them out. And you're talking about June, July, maybe quite early. The grain has to be soft, otherwise it's not digested by the animal. So you mow it, and you've an opportunity to undersow as well if you want to earlier on when you're sowing the crop, so you might get a second cut then of grass coming up through, or some of the volunteers coming up through again. I think if anyone is reseeding ground, I think a whole crop and undersow is a really good option, in organics, because you're mowing it quite early, so then it's not, but you're getting a good crop of barley and peas established on ground. You're mowing in early, so the weeds aren't going to seed. And then if you're undersowed with some grass seed, I've always used the Fruitful Farms 4.0, which is really good mix of clovers in there, and then you get a good second cut off it as well, or even a third cut, as I did this year. So
that's brilliant. Yeah, that's good. And then you kind of have a high protein, kind of rich feed to give your animals then over winter and keep their condition up.
The whole crop, they push everybody out of the way for it. Now, the only issue I seem to have with the whole cropping is that for some reason I seem to get inspected by the department so many times, and I think it's because satellite images don't really understand what I've done. I've gone in now. I do get
only doing the headlands, and then they're wondering what's okay.
So because I am getting the protein payment, 50% of the protein payment, because it's only half peas, half barley in the mix. So they're monitoring their satellite images, and I'm sure a lot of it is done by AI now, and it's sort of red flagged as what's going on here. So there's nothing, I've read the terms and conditions, nothing to say I can't whole crop it. It's still a harvest. It's just earlier than most people. And if I was doing that, I wouldn't be undersowing it with grass. But I usually establish a crop afterwards. So after harvest, if it's oats or flahavans or wheat, I try and get my cover crops in as soon as possible. And it's brilliant when I'm chopping straw, so I can get in there literally the next day and have the seed ready. And most years I've put in a heavy feed of Phacelia. I always put a bit of fodder rapin as well. I've tried mustard, I've tried crimson clover, I've done a lot of things, but they can get expensive, all these seeds. But I do think it's important to have as much variety in your cover crop as possible. So I think it's so. Then you can avail. If you do that, you can avail of I'm in the acres scheme, and I have in the cover catch crops. It's called catch crops and cover crops are the same thing, pretty much. So you can graze that up until 15th of September if it's well established, and then you can't graze it until the 1st of January, I think, if you're in the acre scheme anyway.
Do you have any issues with the vermin and the whole crop, the baled whole crop?
So another great organic farmer, like yourself, Hannah, is Bill George, and I was talking to Bill, and he told me exactly what to do with my bales of whole crop, because I was having a problem with vermin. I tried stacking them up high, tried stacking them everywhere, but he said no, just give yourself a bit of room in a corner of a field and put them on their flats and leave around a foot, if not more, between each bale.
Okay.
And you put them all down in a line, and you can look up each line. Where I have them is near the back door of the house, and I feed the cats at the back door.
Oh, very good.
It's very close to there. You can literally, the dog or the cat can walk around each bale.
Yeah.
Obviously the grass grows up around it, so there's nothing you can do about that. But I have a walk up and down them every 10 days or so when I'm just walking the dogs.
So anyone who has a little terrier or a cat, put them to work.
So basically, rats like getting into little hidey holes. So if you try and put the bale up high or have them tight together, they'll work away. Whereas last year I had 94 bales of whole crop silage, all put in 4 rows, about 20 something bales in each row, and not a single bale was damaged. And I've heard of people putting little tiny electric fences around it. That might work as well. I've heard of different things, but this is on a grass field. It's not on a concrete yard. It'd probably work was on a concrete yard as well. I didn't have that luxury of space at the time.
We're coming towards the end of the podcast, and I guess it's important to say, because you're selling so much direct, to try and support you in terms of the flour you're producing for the shops, but also you have your own farm shop, you also have your own peas and barley that you're selling here off farm.
So, we sell barley and peas,
we
sell the beef, we sell our potatoes, our carrots, all our veg from the whole garden.
What's the website for people who might be interested?
Shankillcastle.com.
Okay.
We don't sell anything over the website, it's all in person, but you can come to our farm shop Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays.
Cool. Anything else you'd like to mention before we go? Any little bits of wisdom?
Definitely. Like I think we've been 8 years with Flahavans, and I think they're just a fantastic company. From they've taken the sort of the flame of organics and flown, so I think we as growers are very lucky to have a company that we can sort of rely on, because I'm growing my barley and peas and I'm just relying on selling that privately, and that can be hard. You're waiting for a phone call to sell a ton or two here and there, whereas there's nothing like getting the combine in, putting it into a trailer, sending it down, and knowing that you'll be guaranteed a payment out of it, and it's always a very fair payment.
Well, Rueben, thank you very much. For anyone listening, be sure to check out Ruben's website, like you said, theshankill.com. Shanklecastle.com. Thank you, Ruben. For anyone listening, we will have another podcast in 2 weeks' time. This podcast was brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. For more on organics, you can go to www.irishorganicassociation.ie. And for me, Hannah Quinn-Mulligan, thank you very much for tuning in.